Welcome back to the Ask a Coach series. Super excited to have our new guest here today. This is a great opportunity for you to ask burning questions that you have in the workplace as being a leader or potentially becoming a leader. And we have a new scenario today with one of our esteemed faculty members, Whit Mitchell. Whit, thank you for being with us today.
Of course, looking forward to it. Just got in from a nice little long walk in Hanover, so I'm ready to go.
Oh, that'll be perfect. So I'm excited to get your feedback and your response to one of the questions that we received from our community. So here goes. I'll read it to you, and then you provide me some of your feedback, and then I'll ask some additional questions in between.
Perfect.
Okay. So my team seems to lack energy and engagement. We just went through a reorg at my company, and I've been given a new team to manage. I want them to be more active. I have managed teams before, but this one seems to be lackluster. Many members are new on the team because of the reorganization. I want to get moving and have a team that works with me, but also works well together. What I used to do on my previous teams was to encourage discussion and idea generation, but that doesn't seem to be working. I like working with an active and engaged team. What am I doing wrong? Or do you have any ideas to help me bring this team up to speed?
Thank you. Wonderful question. And it happens quite a bit in today's work. We're seeing a lot of employees jump to different jobs because they're looking for a better fit. So that's where I'll start. I noticed that you said, in quotes, I want them to be more active. I think that's the first hint for me that she doesn't know what they want. So one of the ways to engage other people, especially when you've got a brand new team, you're a new leader, they're coming in a little hesitant. What's going on in the organization? Do I still have a job? How am I going to interact with this new leader? They've got lots and lots of questions. And what this leader is saying, I want them to be more active. She's already, I think it's a she's already putting herself in a position of wanting something from them without really understanding what they need from her. So I'd change it around a little bit. And I use an acronym FORM, F-O-R-M. I got this from Ron Price of Price Associates. And I think if she met individually with each of them and went through these four letters or these four terms, it might start to turn the tide for her. So FORM stands for family, for the F, occupation, for the O, recreation, for the R, and what matters most, for the M. So if she could sit with each one of them and ask them just a little bit about their family, get to know them, build some intimacy. It's a funny word to use, but I use it quite a bit. Their aunts, their uncles, the pets. People share their pets with me. They share their parents, their loved ones, their boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, partners. So I get a lot of information on my first phone call before we get started in a coaching engagement, finding out a little bit, and then I share about my family. So it's also good for the employee to know a little bit about you, not just one way. The occupation's a fun question because hopefully the new leader understands the occupation that they're going into. The fun question is to say, so what led you to this? I talked to a fellow the other day that when he was 10 years old, he got a chemical set for Christmas. Well, he's now a PhD in chemical engineering at the age of 40, and that's what started it. But it was just a wonderful story to hear how he got started in his occupation. So go back a little bit, find out where they used to work or what college degrees they have or learning that they've had in the field that they're in. What really turned them on to apply for this job? And what did they like about their last job within the organization? Because now they're in a different, with a different leader, and there's been a reorg. The R, people always like to talk about the R. What do you like to do when you're not working so hard for recreation? So people talk about gardening or reading. I'll ask them what books they're reading, or they might talk about outdoor activities. Where have they been? What vacations have they been on? And then what matters most? I always save that one for last because it's building up FORM, the FOR, and then what really matters most. And boy, people spend a minute and it could be something about their mom or their dad or a team they were on in high school or college or a band they played in. And usually it comes back to their professional or their personal work. What really matters most is, and I tell a little story about my mom when I was young and how she always helped people and she made a difference in people's lives. And really, that's what matters most to me. Once you have that conversation, there'll be a little bit of a breakthrough, and you'll notice that that person is a little more attentive to working with you because they recognize that you care and recognize about who they are. That's a start. Maybe a week or two later, certainly early on, there are five different areas that I want to highlight for people when they're hiring somebody. Now, this person has hired a new team. It was given to them, so there wasn't a hiring involved. So the team inherited a leader and the leader inherited a team. It's a little different, but I'll give you the five anyway because I think they're important. The first one is hire the right fit for the position. So 70 to 75% of a leader's success will be to hire the right fit for the position. I'm going to take a little bit of a right-hand turn on this, and I'll come back to the other four. At Price Associates, we have a multitude of instruments that help people understand more about themselves in a number of different areas. Their behaviors, the DISC instrument, their driving forces, the why, which really engages them, which I'll talk about in a minute. The Acumen Index, which gives us some understanding of their past perceptions of themselves. And then there's some questions about the skills, and they rate themselves. We utilize this in hiring process at a high level. So we'll actually have the organization create what looks like the perfect job for whatever the job is. And then we'll have people who are being considered for hiring. We'll get down to the last three and have them take the instrument, and then we'll match their answers to the job, what we call the job benchmark, and it provides interview questions. So now we know a ton about the person. Once they come on, the person that we pick, we can then coach them in the areas that maybe they need a little coaching in because we have so much information. So that could be used for the new leader if they had that information to understand and appreciate and recognize the differences and the uniqueness of each of the people. But let me go back to the other four. So that's the hiring part. The next part is to sit down with each of your employees and come up with some expectations that are clear and agreed upon. In a reorg, all of a sudden the expectations are thrown upside down and inside out. New leader, new expectations, new position. I'm taking on this and I'm letting go of that. So if the leader and the team member can have clear and agreed and underline the agreed upon 3 times, so ask the leader some questions. Clear and agreed upon. Agreed upon means that this is part of your responsibilities. This is about 40% of your job. We've got that information from the job benchmark already. And make sure there's some back and forth so that there's some negotiation by both sides so that you're clear what's coming in. The next one is provide the employee with resources that they need. Resources may be your time, the leader's expertise. Resources might be money. The resources might be, being able to go to 2 conferences a year, or they might want some books or some sign up for the Complete Leader, another way to use resources. And then the last one is just to build, and I used this word before, build intimacy, get to know them, get to know their family. To a point, some people don't like to share too much, and you have to be sensitive to that. But what you talked about was that, I want them to be more active. So if you want them to be more active, they really have to kind of buy into who you are. And the way to buy into who you are is to find out who they are. So I have a little story to go along with this. There was a new family that moved in a neighborhood, and I share this story. And the older couple across the street had a neighborhood gathering where they would invite the new couple over for cocktails, and the rest of the neighborhood showed up. And the person whose house they had it in noticed that the new couple was speaking a lot of the evening to an older couple that lived next door. And the next day, the hostess went across the street and said, thanks for coming to the party, and everybody really enjoyed you. And the older couple is speaking so highly of you. And the younger couple said, well, that's interesting because they didn't really ask us any questions about us. They just told us all about them. And yet What happened? The older couple was fascinated with the younger couple. Why? Because they could talk about themselves. So sometimes leaders get too interested in talking about who they are, where they've come from, and all they've done. Reverse it. Reverse it. Just find out about other people, find out about them, about their job, about what their interests are, and stay up with that stuff. And engagement, even if they're not exactly the right fit, will start to go up. Instead of you wanting them to be more active, they will be more active. So I'll pause there. If you have a question, I've got a couple more ideas.
Yeah, I think the thread that's been weaved through everything you mentioned is just servant leadership. So it sounds like the leader needs to, as you've mentioned, change their focus to instead of what's going on with the team, how can I fix them, to how can I serve them? How can I make sure they have what they need to feel empowered and also to feel confident to work with me, to stay here, to use their gifts, to create this relationship. And the other thing I heard was just building relationships in general. So breaking the ice, maybe having some team building activities, which takes away from all of the changes, which you spoke about a disc assessment. For those of us, I'll include myself, who have a high steadiness score, it can be really abrupt and it can be difficult to deal with change, but focusing on the relationship part of it and not so much of the tasks of work, which are super important, but it helps to create cohesion, it sounds like.
Yes,
Yeah.
good for you. Davina, you remind me as before we got on the phone and we had our chat together, I've just come back from California working with a team that's growing. And because of COVID, they haven't been together for 2 years. And there are 3 or 4 from Japan, some from Washington, D.C., some from different parts of California. We all came together live for the first time in 2 years. And I asked the CEO, what did you want more than anything else after 2 days? And he said, we just need to get to know each other. So we use, and I want to give you this information about the instruments that I've talked about. In the morning, we went through the DISC instrument, and the DISC, for those of you that don't know it, give us some understanding about people's behavior, observable behaviors, the how. Excuse me. In the afternoon, more importantly, when you talk about engagement, is an instrument that's called driving forces or person's motivators. They're really hidden. Behavior you can't hide too much. You see somebody that's impatient waiting in line, you kind of know which behavior they are, or somebody that's very calm and quiet. The drivers are a little more hidden and they come from inside, but the drivers give us what they're engaged in. So for leaders to run a DISC and then a driving forces instrument, the driving forces shares with us 12 different drivers. And the top 4, and I'll give you some examples, people that like to help people that like return on investment, people that like to lead, people that like to learn. So once we understand the top 4 out of 12, what I encourage people in my coaching is to take those top 4 and turn them into a couple of sentences and share those with the leader. Those sentences will provide the leader with their job description and what they really enjoy doing. And then I encourage the leader to figure out, okay, how can I fit? They really want to learn. Well, let's make sure they really want to learn what, but there's not a lot of learning. Send them to workshops, make sure they have access to books and iPods and podcasts, not iPod, but podcasts, and make sure they have, a chance to learn. Oh, I really like to help people. Make sure that person's involved when they come around for the fundraising for a charity within the organization. So you can adjust their position a little bit based on their drivers. And then having that conversation with the leader about here are my top 4, and the leader writing down what they're saying, like a doctor in the office, understanding, and then being able to give them some of what really drives them, it will take engagement and send it through the roof. So the leader, again, this leader who's got a new team, if they have the instrument, she can go through the instrument and learn an awful lot about them, and then bring them in and let them tell you more about it. It's not an exact science, but it's pretty close. But people love talking about themselves and how they fit within the instrument. So those would be some tips on how to re-engage or get engaged with a new team and a new leader. And lastly, the leader should share everything about their instrument with them in graphs and go through it and then have them ask questions about it. And that gives them, that sends the fear away. So the trust level starts, and they start to ask questions once they understand their own instrument about the leader's instrument, and the trust starts to come up and the fear starts to go down, because the leader has been so somewhat giving of themselves and sharing information about themselves. Somewhat transparent was the word I was looking for. Transparent leadership helps with servant leadership.
That's excellent. Yeah, I was thinking that as you were talking about it. It's combining the transparency with the servant leadership in order to get the buy-in of their team and to create and forge a new path forward, it sounds like. Well, this was great, Whit. There were so many nuggets here that I think this person can take and implement immediately for some things, and for other things to take a look at the assessments, the DISC and the driving forces, and how it can be a great tool to help the team get to the next phase. So all of those assessments are listed on the completeleader.org/assessments. And this was great information. So we're excited to share this and get some more feedback. Of course, if you're watching this and you have a question, feel free to email us at info@thecompleteleader.org, and we'll wrap up this session and we'll see you next time.